decorating a folder with book pages, tags and pockets. Hello, it's Joey and today we are indulging our paper passion, decorating this folder. It's a ridiculous amount of fun, but we know that we deserve it. It has a collage cover that I made last week. I will link that in the description box down below. We have beautiful ephemera on the inside, a luscious combination of envelopes, pockets and tags. I've got a painted book page and this stunning bird. I'll show you how to put it together, and to help beginners I will also do a brief make of the envelope and the pocket on the left hand side. So I'll do enough so that you can do this too. The inspiration for this folder came from one that I made about a year or so ago, and you really seem to enjoy it. And I'm not saying that today's has any purpose other than just to make us happy. So subscribe if that vibe works for you, and let's get on and decorate this folder. The key supplies that I'm using today to make this folder are really book pages. So we already have our cover made, and this is the cover that I'm going to use today, and this is the one that I made in last week's video. So it's a simple tessellation of book pages, so putting book pages vertically and horizontally, overlapping them and gluing together, a really fun process. I had sewn on this and that added some structure, and I'd decorated on the outside, so collage, stamping, just a little bit of playing. Today what I'm going to do is take a beautiful book and line the inside of this cover. So it's not made from pieces of cardboard. That's the difference with this cover, and it means that perhaps if you don't have expensive cardboard you can still make the cover. I'm going to line it with a beautiful picture, and you can use any image. See what you have in your books that you can tear out. A large image here of a bird. I've added pockets and extra pieces on the right hand side. You can also add anything. Today is meant to be inspiration, not a prescriptive process, just ideas perhaps to spark your imagination. I have a little flip-flap mechanism here in the middle because I like them, and it's a great place for adding little journaling cards, anything you fancy, ephemera. I'm going to add a book page that I've stamped and painted, and I've kind of gone with a bit of a blue and yellow theme because I think that's really positive around spring that is emerging, at least here in the UK. And I've used book pages to make the envelopes, to make the pocket, and to make this little envelope here and the pocket on the left hand side. So what I would like to do to begin with is just share the most wonderful book that I've used to line this cover. So this is the book that I've raided, and I did use it, as I said a few videos ago. It is Sketches of Bird Life by C.F. Tunnicliffe, and it has just the most beautiful drawings of birds in it. Large drawings, impactful drawings, colourful drawings. It's even got suggestions as to how you might like to have a go drawing yourself. It's got annotations in beautiful script. So this is the kind of book that is absolutely not just perfect for taking apart and using in our project, but I really feel it's one of those where we need to do justice to all of the images. And because I'm a little bit hoardy, and I think some of you may be the same, I went and bought a couple of these because as soon as I started ripping out a page, I felt that I needed to have a backup. So it's backup-itis came to play. So this is a complete book, but I've raided it and pulled out a few pages that I thought might work today. So let me just share those. And here are the pages from the deconstructed book with a candidate on top, which I think might work quite well. I'm just thinking that would work really well. The colours, the proportions, and the majority of the picture is sort of to the left hand side, and that's what I want today. I don't want to cover up all of my sewing, so I might just trim a little bit off the bottom. So I think that one, let's not procrastinate, let's crack on and do it and choose that one for the left hand side. So the first thing I want to do is stick the bird picture on, and then we will work pretty much from right to left, adding all of these extra pieces. So we'll go through it step by step and obviously innovate, experiment and play and do it your own way. Let's get this out of the way. But I think I want a slightly roughish edge. So I'm going to tear this, not trim it. It's quite thick paper, and that is one of the beautiful things about this book. I had a bit of an obsession with a book called A Victorian Flower Album by Henry Terry, and I've used it so many times and spoken about it. I even know the author. I think it rings the changes a bit to use images of birds and wildlife, and I think they're really pretty and colourful, and as spring emerges here in England, it's something to celebrate, something to be positive about. So this will go on the left hand side with a bit of a margin, a bit of a space, so we're seeing the beautiful texture of the sewing that we did last week. So I have a relatively watery glue. I think this is possibly better for getting some coverage than a Pritt stick, for example, but I do feel that this is the sort of project where I need plenty on and I need to go relatively close to the edge of the paper. I'm also going to give it a bit of glue all over here, and then this can just nestle neatly on the left hand side, trying to get perhaps the same amount of margin around the page all the way on this cover, and that seems perfect to me. So you can see that the page I've got doesn't cover all of the inside of the cover. We're going to add something over here, we're going to fold it in a minute, but we'll still see and retain plenty of this beautiful image. I'm just going to use my bone folder to see if I can get that to stick really, really well. And the colours are just amazing. In fact, unintentionally, I've got a marrying up of the deep green of the thread that I used in sewing the cover with some of the green in the image, and I didn't really notice that when I was choosing the picture. I just thought these were pretty and quite striking actually. And as soon as we've done this, I think what I'm going to do is determine where the folds in this folder are going to be. And again, this is a little bit of choice. What I like is for the back fold here to be not quite as wide as the middle, and that means that when this folds in, there's just a little bit of give here on the left if I want to add maybe a ribbon, or there's extra height building up from adding things in there. So I will divide up my cover into 3 parts with that kind of principle in mind. Let me grab my ruler and we'll divide it up. So this cover in its entirety is about 45 centimetres. So if I were to divide it equally into 3 parts, they'd be 15 centimetres each. So if I reduce the width of this one a bit and maybe make this 14 centimetres, that will give me just a little bit of that extra leeway when I'm folding this over, just a bit of spare here, and we'll donate a bit more of the width over here. And I just want to check that that is wide enough to take the pocket that I want to add on the back. So I'm going to add a pouch that I made. I really enjoyed making these, and I've got a video on how to make them step by step completely. I will leave that linked in the description box down below. I'm not going to make this today because as an alternative you could add all sorts of things on the right hand side, including an extra set of envelopes or some other pockets that you might want to make. But you can take a look at that video if you want to add specifically this item. If I position that on the right hand side, it's going to cover up quite a lot of the back, and according to my mark, I'm just checking, if I fold this at, let's say 14.5, that will give me enough space to include this pocket. So I'm going to fold 14.5, which is just less than all of this divided by 3, and then I'll divide what's left and fold that over. There. Let's just do the fold, relatively gently, easing it in. Take my bone folder and give it a squish rather than a sweep. I don't want to drag it over the collage cover. Let's try to be relatively protective there. Okay, and I think as well at this stage I might just take off a little bit of that extra thread that's still dangling around. So we have an inside cover. What I will do is literally just fold it over. I think that's the way to do this, isn't it? So that the edge here is flush with that outside. So we've got quite a thick cover, so really satisfying. I just give that a squish, press it down. I think it shows how many layers we had. We had the book pages, we decorated this with collage. It's got a bit of gesso on, I think, and various paints. And there we are. Again, I think I'll just trim off these extras. Naughty little extras, take those off. So I've got a folder now with a line on the left, still retaining lots of that image. We're not covering all of that up. Space for the right and space down here to add extra decoration. So step number 1 to show you how to make an envelope of any particular size, and that's for either the flip flap mechanism here, or if you wanted to do something similar over here, you could have an envelope opening that way, opening down, opening up, if you don't want to go to the effort of perhaps making a large pocket like this. So I've got just a large glossy book page with some beautiful bulbs on it, and all I'm going to do is, with my scoreboard here, and you don't have to have the scoreboard, I'm just going to make an indentation. I'm going to make a fold after this. Where that indentation is, I'm just putting a groove about 1 centimetre in on either side of this book page, and then I'm going to score again to give myself a lower flap, and I'm going to score again to give myself an upper flap, and the positioning of the grooves, or the grooves that I'm using to make this envelope, mean that when I fold the bottom flap up and fold the top one down, the top will overlap by at least 1 centimetre here. So if you didn't have a scoreboard, you could still just make folds in a piece of paper. The easiest thing to do for making this is to make sure that your folds are scored quite well, because we're going to use the position of those folds to just trim off a little bit of the paper before we glue it down and make an envelope. I've done envelopes many times on my channel, and I have a link in the description box down below to a video if you'd like to just have a browse around and a play at making envelopes. Very much for beginners, so step by step, made it easy. I've also got a playlist that I've put together with envelopes, pockets, tags, that sort of thing. So if you want to have a look at the playlist and save that, then you'll always have anything I create around envelopes, pockets, tags. I'm going to take the right hand rectangle out and just a little bit more. So I'm just taking my scissors and trimming out to make a little bit of an angle here and a little bit of an angle here, and we do the same on the left hand side. So I start just to the right of the fold as I'm trimming now, and on here I began trimming just to the left of the fold. We'll take that out, and I'll do something very similar for the top flap, starting at about 1 centimetre to the left of that vertical fold, and take my scissors to the crisscross of the folds where they intersect, and then again about 1 centimetre away from the fold, just beyond it, and that gives me an angle on the top flap
that's a little bit more slopey than the angle on the bottom flap, and that to me feels a bit more like an envelope. You can see it's just really, really easy, nothing complicated. How lucky is that? I've got daffodils on my book page with no particular planning. So we have an outline of an envelope, and all I need to do to make an envelope, make sure these flaps are folded in, take a strongish glue, so I will use my Pritt stick for this, and add glue almost to where the fold is, just finishing a little bit further away from this fold here, so you don't end up with glue here sticking directly to the front of your envelope, and fold that up. And for the flip flap mechanism, all you want to do is play with a few different book pages of different sizes, so that you've got something here to just flip around with, and you can play happily adding extra pieces of paper, washi, you can write on it, you can stamp on it. The envelope that I have here is actually one I made. I did an altered envelope, let's show you, with beautiful muted tones of teal and some texture. I have texture in some fabric here, I've stamped, I've got labels. It was just a huge amount of fun putting this envelope together and then decorating it. So I thought I'd use one of those in this particular folder, and certainly the colour palette toned. One that I've got today I will also use in my little flip flap mechanism. So now we know how to create an envelope. You could add that to the right hand side. I thought I'd also share with you how to make a little sloping pocket that you can tuck lots of lovely goodies in. So we'll do these two little make it exercises, and then we're free to embellish our folder in whatever way we want, using whatever supplies we have. So here's the pocket I'm going to make, and you can see it's relatively white paper, and I'm okay with that. What I have gone for is a book with a relatively square page, and the paper is, it's not the flimsiest, so it's sort of mid thickness, and I think that really helps in the structure of making this pocket. So let's just tear one of these off and see if we can put this together. Step one, we're going to fold it height wise and width wise. So we're going to fold it, let's just do it. Sometimes it's easier to do it than to talk about it. So fold it, we need some good creases in this one again, height wise, and then up. And it doesn't matter if you have the rough edge on this remaining, don't feel that you need to trim it, just pull it out of your book. So I've got a page folded into 4 quadrants. For a pocket that faces so that you can, let's say, put it on the left hand side of your folder and put things in this way, we need to fold to begin with the top left quadrant, and we're going to fold that in almost as far as the vertical fold on this piece of paper. And I'm going to confess that when I started making a few of these again, I had to go back and look at another of my videos to remember how to make this. So if you do need to watch this a couple of times, well, that doesn't matter at all. I often need to remind myself. I've made a fold that takes up most of the width of this top left quadrant. So this fold is both a nice right angle here, and it's almost as far as this middle vertical fold. So let's call this the big one. I'm now going to fold again, but not in as far. So I'm not measuring, I'm just going to make it a smaller triangle. This is a smaller triangle than this one, but let's make it nice and crisp, and I have tried to get right angles at the corners. Turn the whole thing over, and we're going to take this corner and fold it in, And we're going to seek to make this triangle that we create to be somewhere in between the size of the other two that we've already made. And make that a crisp fold again, right angles here and here. So we've got top left, big, bottom right, small, third quadrant behind, medium size. Need to do a bit of trimming. I'm going to fold these up and glue them, but to make life easier, I'm first of all going to trim between the two folds that are both on one side. I'm doing that with my scissors. I think it's better than tearing. So I've made a cut to the middle on the left hand side along that horizontal fold, and now all I'm going to do is take, I think I'll use my more liquid glue, and begin by putting a dot behind the baby triangle, glue that down. I'm going to fold up. That gives me visibility of another triangle, put a dot of glue there, and this is just holding those in place really, nothing more than that. Now I want to start to attach some of these, stay down, these sides together. I'll have a small line of glue, it came out quite quickly, fold that up. I'm going to fold back this flap and just press that down and add a bit of glue to the edge here so that that can stay down. The magic is beginning, and this very large triangle that we folded, I'll give that a bit of help to just stay down, and a little bit of glue in the very short space that remains there, and we'll fold that over. And I'm perfectly happy that these slopes are not absolutely evenly spaced, and by that I mean I've got a space here, a little bit more showing, a space here, a bit more showing, and a little pocket here. But what I will do is find my corner rounder and just take off a bit at the top right. Do you know what, I don't like the shape of that round, it's still too square. This is a thing, rounding is a thing. That's a bit better. So now I have a pocket that would be perfect for the left hand side of my folder. If I wanted to make a pocket for the right hand side, all you need to do when you start the folding, let me show you, we folded up before, so I want you to be able to do this independently and make whatever you want, distributing whatever goodies embellishments you want over this folder. All we would do is the same process, but begin by folding the top right hand corner down. Everything else you're just reversing, and you'll end up with a pocket that opens that way. So you are able to fill and decorate this with pockets wherever you like. Let's move on to covering up some of what is nevertheless beautiful, but I feel we need to add our lovely goodies. So I'm going to add my big pockety pouch, but I know that that's not tall enough to cover it all up, and if I want to cover it up I'm going to choose some pretty book pages. So I think what I'm going to do to begin with is just add something from a book about flowers to the top right so it peeps out. Maybe even just this, because it's got some of a coral coloured flower on it, which is good with the orange, I think. I think I'm going to just stick that on there, and I don't want right angles everywhere, so have just a bit of rip. Get that down, and I'm going to keep visibility of the sewing again. Now, in fact, to do that, let's just take a little bit of that off. There we go, perfect. So I've got a little bit of flower that's going to peep out, and I want something on the top left here. So I've got a tag, gorgeous little tag that I've just printed off and stuck onto card. This is a Tracy Fox tag with some beautiful handwritten inky lettering and numbers. It looks a bit scientific, doesn't it? Really, really nice. And although only some of it will show, I'm going to put that on there. I'm going to layer it on top of my extra bit of book page. Just checking where my fold is, because I don't want that to be in the fold. And that can sit there. And once we get going, this is really, really quick and so unbelievably satisfying. She said, pulling up her sleeves. There we go. And my big pouch, which has, so this has just a handmade envelope with a nice bit of craft cardstock in there. And that just tucks in the pouch, and I've made it with a big atlas. I've got a couple of tags in here. Why don't we be luxurious and add another tag? How about that? I like the idea of a bit of texture peeping through, so I've just created a tag again on some cardstock, added a couple of pieces of, well, wool and hessian string. I've got some blues coming through, a bit of old book page and a sentiment there. So I think I'm just going to add that as an extra in there, because I want this string, I want this texture in here. Plenty of glue. Shame that we can't see, or we have to use up the back when it's such a pretty page from an atlas, but so be it. We're still going to get something gorgeous at the end of this. So making sure again that I don't put it too close to the fold. I think that can go there. Move it up a bit, then I see as much of the sewing as possible. Now over to the middle. It's feeling lovely already, isn't it? It's getting to be chunky, lovely. So in the middle, I want to add some items that don't cover up too much of my lovely ducks. And in this one, what I decided to do was use some book page and a stamp that I'd coloured with a lovely pretty flower there. So I will see what we can do with that without covering up too much of the duck. So I think on this occasion, because the duck comes to the right a bit more, I'm going to trim this down. So why don't we take just a bit off? Do we like that's a lot better? I think the width works. What I do want on here is just a little bit of something extra. So I'm going to do a bit of punching in some scrapbook paper just to give it a fluty edge. So I found a piece of scrapbook paper and just a punch with a nice little fluty edge there. I'm just going to do a bit of punching so that we've got some decorative edging to use. Right, here's my edge. I just need to tear that off so I can use it as a decorative piece. And this is going to go just behind, very close to the edge. And I think the key when I'm using this little fluted edge is to make sure that the book page goes relatively close to take away a lot of what's left. So by that I mean I don't want a lot of this showing, I just want the fluty edge peeping out behind. And that is going to go on here. That's good because I'm not covering up too much of my duck. Any sort of image on a book page is fine. You could do one with just hand drawing if you don't have a stamp, or have a stamp and have a play with pens or with paint. It's really, really satisfying. I talked in my last video, or a video a couple of videos ago, it's called What is a Junk Journal, about really this all being about just having fun, and I think this project, this folder, epitomises that it's just about fun. I can't claim that it has a purpose. Yes, it would be a lovely present, I think, but it's the making of it, isn't it? It's the experimentation and the colours and playing and the feel of the paper, just all of that. Well, I think so. Putting it all together, that process is just So enjoyable. So now I think I want to move on to my flip-flap mechanism of envelopes down here. So I'm going to use 3. 1, 2. So I've just used different book pages of different shapes, which obviously means that the book itself, the envelope itself, comes out in a different size. They're all relatively large. That does mean it's going to cover up a fair amount of my flower here, but that's okay. So I think what I'll do is have the example of my altered envelope on the top, and then I really just want these others to open somehow in the space. So what should we do? Should we have the largest one at the back and then this popping up in the middle, so it's going to open like that? 1, 2, 3. So to do this, the first thing we need to do is stick my largest envelope and the one that I want on the top together only at the flap. So I'm taking my smallest envelope that I want to sit on top, the one that I've embellished as an altered envelope. I have glue on the inside of the flap, and I'm just going to sit my largest envelope into the nook, into the crease. And I'm purposely not putting it in the middle of here. I'm deciding that this is just going to be a little bit lower down. Let's put some weight towards the bottom of this folder, because we've got a pretty image up here, we've got a pretty image over here. Let's also have some of the focal point down below. So I've got 2 envelopes nestled together with 1 flap attached to the outside of the flap of the largest envelope, and this one I want to glue onto my folder so that it will sit neatly and fold on top of this one, and that folds on top of there. So you just want to position your envelopes so that they do fold into each other. So if I'm going to have this one here, then again I've not covered up too much of my duck, then I want my outer flap to have some glue. We'll get some glue on the flap of this 3rd envelope, and we will position this so that it's inside the fold. We don't want to have this overlapping where our folder folds. Press that down, open it up, bring this back, and I can place this on top so that when this folds in, I'll show you, when this folds in, that can fold on top. So let's put some glue on the outside of this double envelope flap. Plenty of glue. So we're gluing effectively 2 envelopes down now because they're attached to each other, and that will go in there. And I'm making sure that as this one folds in, it has enough space that it's not encumbered by these. I think I'll have one there, that one there, and that one there. And of course I'm making sure that this fold here doesn't get encumbered by this envelope edge here. So we've used envelopes that are not too big for this middle area, and we've used ones of different sizes, and the one with the most decoration and the most depth is sitting on the top, which makes it a little bit easier to close. So now we need to move on to just a little bit of something down here, and I think before we add the pocket, and I'm tempted to even cut some of that off so that we see a bit more of this duck. Yep, I'm just going to remove some of that after worrying about the corner. see a little bit more of him, don't we? A little bit more of this dot. I think what I'll do to begin with is just add a tiny bit of decoration to this, and I'm going to dull it down. Let's add a little bit of text and get rid of some of that whiteness. Tiny bit of spray, looking better, bit of smudge. I think I'll add a little bit of decoration in the form of some labels. So what have we got? I think the green has just jumped out because really nice, really nice green in there. Whoops. So I'll have something horizontal there. So that can go in there. Perfect. Just finish sticking it down. A bit more. Just add whatever you've got, any little images. There we go. A few little tagettes, baby ones. And a bit of a circular punch piece of book page. This is from, is it Your Creative Studio? My Creative Studio. That can go in. I like the green of this, that's really nice. Bit more. Just add whatever you like, whatever feels like being put in a new home. Why don't we add that little extra piece? I really like that. Right, I've now got a little pocket that's been grungified and the colour theme is looking really coordinated. So using the same method, I've just put together a teeny tiny pocket, and I've actually used a page from a William Shakespeare book of plays, and it's one that I had previously sprayed with my bronze mica. So it's in that vintage theme a little bit. This is one that I want to have tucking into this pocket when it's folded in. So let me show you. I want this pocket to be a little bit of a holding place for my envelope. It just holds it in neatly rather than flapping around. So the first thing I'm going to do is position this envelope by tucking it in. So let's do that again. Take my little envelope and just tuck it into the top pocket, and that means I know where I want this flap to go when I stick it down on here. And I've just seen I must have forgotten to put glue on the bottom edge here. Let's just glue that down. There we go. Top. That can go in there. Fold that back. We'll get some glue on. Add glue to the rest of this. And that means that when I want to, I can pull that envelope open. So I've got a pocket in place, I've got an envelope in place, and that can tuck in there. But this needs a little bit of decoration, so why don't we add something on here? There we go. Let's have a little bit of a label. The washi is also making that envelope just feel a little bit more robust, which is great, because the William Shakespeare page was very flimsy. Like that. Yeah, that's better. Love it. I'm going to have something on the back because I feel like it, with some turquoise and a gratuitous piece of washi because we can. Voila. I think I'm going to go wild and use something with rather a lot of colour, but I just can't resist the turquoise that's in this that marries up with the duck. Definitely go off piste and do whatever you feel. Just gorgeous. And all that I need to do is add a ribbon of some form to act as a closure. So on this one I thought because it was quite large it would benefit from something, and I've not done many closures before, so it was good for me to experiment and have a go at something new. So what I'm going to do is make a couple of holes on the first fold and then we will just thread that ribbon through. So it's 25 centimetres depth. I'll find the middle point, and then I'm just going to go about 6 centimetres either side, and that will be where I put a hole through. I'm just going to do it with a very large darning needle, and it's pretty easy to do. We're not going through a signature, we're literally just going through the cover. I have a ribbon that actually came from a set of cards, so blank cards that I bought, and there's no way I was going to throw that away. So you can see what I'm going to do is have the ribbon coming from the inside and just tie it on the outside. Thread it. Pull that through. Let's get it on my needle again. Thread that through. Just going to even these up, tighten it up and tie it in the middle. Tie it in a knot in the middle. And this gives us enough to act as a closure. And this is my decorated folder using lots of envelopes, pockets and tags. Hit the subscribe button if you'd like to see more like this, and specifically I've got a few things coming up on my channel. I'm going to be making these decorated luxury butterflies, which I've done using iridescent paint and some beads, and I'm going to add those to tags. So I've got some really pretty ones to share with you. Lots and lots, it becomes rather addictive. I've got some specimen cards that I've made using copy paper. So I've done some collaging and made a window and decorated those. And I'm also of course going to be finishing off a journal using a tag that we made the other week as part of my beginner series, How to Make a Junk Journal. So this will form a cover on a beautiful piece of craft cardstock, and I will gather some papers, fold them and sew them in with a really simple figure of 8 method to make a junk journal. So hit the subscribe button, give me a thumbs up if you've enjoyed this, and I absolutely hope to see you soon.